I'm Helen Bodell. I am the EAL segment manager at Twinkl, and we are today celebrating European Day of Languages and looking at how we can empower you as educators to celebrate on this day, on the 26th of September, and then hopefully continually all through the year. We can celebrate languages all the time. I'm also joined with Bethan, who's the educational content lead for languages. So between us, we're going to share our resources, some ideas, and find out from you what you've been up to as well for European Day of Languages. So on my slides there is meet the teams. That's the EAL team. Currently, we've got Christina, who's the EAL product owner, Claire, the team leader, me, who I look after all like the marketing side. So if you see any of Twinkl EAL on social media or podcast and things like that, so I do everything to do with that. We've got a designer called Monica, and then we've got 3 content writers at the moment who are all busy creating resources and editing resources and blogs and things ready for you to use, which is great. Thanks, Emily. Okay, so to start with, I like to think about like inclusive displays to celebrate language, which can be an easy way to start celebrating languages and having them visible in the classroom, and a way that we can start talking about them and bringing in other people's languages. The children that are new starters are then aware that their languages are being displayed, and it makes for a really inclusive environment to start with. So at the top there, we've got the EL resource display pack, our languages banner, and then at the bottom there on the left, it's welcome in multilingual different languages. We've got hello, how are you, thank you, goodbye. That comes as a pack, so that can be displayed in classrooms or in the front of the office or anywhere that might be visible for people to have a look at. So that's really worth a starting point if you've not already thought about displaying those different languages around your school or your setting. Thanks, Emily. Okay, so I'd like to start firstly thinking about how have you celebrated European Day of Languages in the past, or have you thought about celebrating any language days or any days of interest in the past? How have you done it in your setting? If you've got any ideas, you can pop them in the chat. So it might be clubs you've run or days that you've organised or anything like that. Oh, that's a great idea. The quiz, brilliant. You can do it in form groups. A different task for each year group to complete. That's a really nice way of including everybody. That's great, Helen, if you've got those connections, community organisations and parents coming in. It's really nice if you can get parent involvement. Asking parents to read stories in their own language, or language leaders teaching classes in their own language. That's really nice. International Day of Languages, ask the children to come in traditional dress for their country or the colours of the country's flag. That's a brilliant idea. I love that idea of the traditional dress and being able to celebrate that.
Food's always a great one, isn't it? For getting them to bring in a
food's a brilliant one.
I think food's always great.
Yeah, and parents getting involved in that too is nice, isn't it? Mother tongue poetry competition. That's brilliant. That's another one that you could do across the year groups, which is great. And these are all great for primary or secondary as well, aren't they? Singing songs in different languages, each day celebrating a different language, and parents coming in and reading stories, telling nursery rhymes. Oh, that's brilliant. What's been your most successful event, Bethan? Have you done any good ones?
I think when we've had kind of like competitions and things like that, when you had that's always the most fun thing when you have different prizes for year groups. Because I was teaching in secondary school, you'd have to do something that would sort of incentivize them. So something with a chocolate prize, some kind of, language class versus language class, those kind of things are always great. And whenever we've done taster days for different languages, whenever we've had people come in, people absolutely love it when they get the chance to learn something completely different. It's always really fun.
Yeah, that's brilliant. And like you say, having the food in the buffet, I remember that on our last taster days with the
it's always a bit harder these days with permissions, with bringing food in. That's often
allergies,
the issue. For allergies and stuff. It's much harder, but it's such a fun thing if you can get around that and find a way around it. As Natalie's put their lunch with different food from different countries, if you can find a way, particularly with supporting your school, to do it, it's absolutely brilliant. Nothing more motivating than food, really.
No. Thanks, Emily. Oh, thanks. There's some great ideas to start with. So I've come up with a few there. Some of them you've already covered. So having a language fair. So you could do something in your hall or including different classes and getting in different children involved. Trying European food, having fun with the European quiz, either in assembly or in small groups. Collecting travel brochures, if they exist anymore, because I think you can get them still, but I don't know, a lot of things can we do online now, but we could print things off and bits like that, and creating your own ideas there. Making fact files and sharing information about different countries, making a passport for a different country, and creating a buddy system is a nice idea within school that allows sort of other year groups to interact. That could be across your form groups and things as well. So some ideas there that you could do within your setting on that date. Thanks, Emily. And then I just thought about how you can incorporate it into your lessons as well. So we've got some European language packs within the EAL team. We've got those languages there that are displayed. We've also got 19 other languages that are covered that aren't European languages. But if you're interested in dual language resources, we have got a number of languages covered now that you can download the packs. They're full of flashcards, different word maps, things that you can put on display, banners, PowerPoints. So everything should be in there for each language, which should be super useful. And that's not just for European Languages Day, but all the way through the year you can be using those. And they're just easy to download. All the links are there, so when you get the PowerPoint, they should be easy to find as well. Thanks, Emily. We've also thought about how you can then incorporate languages and celebrating languages throughout the year. So I've looked there at a language audit for staff. So you could send that out, especially in the first few weeks, perhaps finding out which languages staff speak, which they might have experience of, that they can either read, write, or speak, that can support learners within your school, but also so that you can celebrate days like this, like International Day of Languages, European Day of Languages, and all those other events throughout the year, that you'll have that knowledge available. So that's free to download, and that's there. And there's some adult guidance that comes with that. We've also got an EAL International New Arrivals and New Starters, the education system in Europe reference table. So that's information about how schools in different countries operate, so how their lunch times might be, how their lessons might look. So any information about those schools that you can then be aware of if you do have new EAL learners starting from those European countries. It's a point of reference really, in a reference table that you can be sent out to all your staff. So that's really useful too. Then we've got the EAL useful translated statements for communication with parents. So that's really easy statements, things like PE kit has to go home, or there might be a non-uniform day, or somebody's injured themselves at school. So things like that. And they're all translated into all the languages that we've got on site there. And they can be used to either copy and paste into letters or to be printed, and things like that. So you can use those. And then finally, the multilingual story club guidance, which is really, really nice, that you can use to set up your own multilingual club. I know a lot of librarians often work with the languages team and work within the English department or the EAL coordinator. So that might be a really nice one for your librarian as well to get involved with. Or your year 11s. If you've got a secondary school, you could use older students to help you set that club up. So that's a really nice idea too. Thanks, Emily. And then also it's the idea of translanguaging. So the definitions there at the top that I've taken from the Bell Foundation. So translanguaging is the term used to describe practices that allow and encourage EAL learners to use their full linguistic repertoire in order to empower them and help them to release their full potential. So it's basically allowing them to use their first language or other languages in the classroom when they need to. So if you're doing think, pair, share, for example, they might think themselves, they might have a think about it in their own language, they might write notes down, and then they might share their answer in English to the rest of the class. But they're using that language to tap into knowledge that they've already got in their first language. And then they can use everything, almost all their resources in their toolbox to access the lesson. So we've got a CPD EAL strategies using a pupil's first language. resource there that can support you in using translanguaging if you haven't already used it before in your lessons. We've also got a podcast episode that I interviewed Jacob Huckle, who is fantastic with translanguaging, and it's about half an hour long, but really worth listening to, and something that you might pick up in the car on the way to school, or walking the dog or something like that, somewhere that you might just be able to get a bit of CPD there that's short and easy to listen to. We've also got 36 other episodes now online, and you can find that on any of the streaming platforms, or it's all available on Twinkl as well.
Including one with me, in fact.
Including one with Bethan. So make sure you listen to that one first, and then you can listen to any others after that. But yeah, they're all free as well to access. So that's really, really useful. And then we've got a translanguaging pack that has got resources that are just open boxes, really, and things that you can use for planning ideas, and they'll be able to use across all subjects. It's quite open-ended, but it's a brilliant starting point if you haven't already dipped your toe into translanguaging and using that in your classroom as a tool. Thanks, Emily. Okay, and then this is our social media sort of across the different platforms. So we've got a Facebook group and a Facebook page. So it's Twinkl EAL on everything. So if you have a look for us on there, we're on Instagram, Threads, Twitter, which is now X, YouTube, Pinterest, on Spotify, and all of the streaming audio platforms. And I'm also on LinkedIn as Helen Bodell, so if you want to follow me on there. But I do try to share resources, ideas, start a bit of a conversation. It's a place where you can ask questions if you're too worried to ask them within your setting or within school. It's a safe space to ask whatever you want to ask, and we'll try and help you the best we can. They're all monitored all of the time by me, so please feel free to message if there's anything that you need. Also, we are willing to make any resources that you can't find online, and you've got any ideas, then please send them through either to ourselves or Twinkl Cares, and the team will endeavour to make them for you and to make your life easier. So I hope you have a fantastic European Day of Languages celebrating, and I'll pass over to Bethan, who will share some more ideas from a languages point of view.
Hi, everybody, and thanks, Helen. I always love, as the language specialist, absolutely love working with Helen and the EAL team, because we share so many of the same values and visions, and it's so important. And days like European Day of Languages, as well as other culture days, are so important for developing that open culture in your school, where all language learners, whether EAL learners or other second language learners, are coming in. It just shows that, you know, languages are an important part of your school's culture. So I absolutely love this one. I always call European Day of Languages Christmas for the languages team, because that's how it feels, because that's the one time that non-language teachers are coming to us and looking at us as well, which for me is really exciting, because I'm so passionate about all of that. But just a little bit about me. So I'm the content lead for languages at Twinkl. We've got a large team, just like EAL, of writers, designers and editors, and we've got one thing in common, which is a real love of language learning. The two main languages that we focus on are French and Spanish, with some German as well. And, you know, between us, we've got a group of linguists, a group of native speakers, and genuine culture lovers. We believe really strongly in the importance of cultural capital and the importance of languages in terms of enhancing your education and your outlook, and just opening and broadening your horizons. I think that's perhaps the most important thing, and I always focus on the quality of the experience rather than any kind of quantity of language learning, just because it's just such an important part of life these days. I've got some links there on the Reflect. You'll get sent this PowerPoint in your email afterwards, and the links are there, but you can also join our Facebook groups as well if you want to be notified, or follow us on X, just to keep up to date with some of our new resources or some of the new things that we're working on. So it's really lovely to be here with Helen talking about European Day of Languages, because, as I said, for us, this is Christmas. This is the big day of the year for us in languages. There are a couple of other cultural and linguistic events that I'll also mention, but for us this is a huge one. And you know, the history of it is always interesting. I guess it's not necessarily something that all children are massively interested in, but it's really nice to just keep it at the back of your mind that the purpose of the day is to celebrate the number and variety of languages spoken across Europe, and finding out about that is always wonderful. And I'm always at pains with French and Spanish to make sure that we're not Europe-centric in our resources, yet this is a European Day of Languages. But truthfully, most schools, and certainly us ourselves, we tend to view it as a day of languages. We celebrate all languages, whether European or from further afield. So, you know, don't feel that you just have to limit it to celebrating European Day of Languages. It so happens that it started in that way because it was started to celebrate the languages spoken across Europe. But fundamentally, the most important part of the day is promoting language learning of any language and celebrating, this is the biggie for me, the linguistic and cultural diversity. It's a real chance for particularly EAL learners to really feel that this is their day to feel part of a whole school community, particularly at the start of the school year, because you're celebrating all communities and all languages. And some of those ideas that you had talking about songs, traditional dress, food, etc., those are all wonderful for really giving all children their place and celebrating all those communities. So I tend to view it as far more than just a day about European languages. It's actually a day about celebrating the wider languages in your school community and the importance of that extended community and how we celebrate that really, and make everybody feel welcome and part of things. I always think that's the most important thing. It's also really important because it just is a gateway to cultural capital. And as part of languages, I always feel, now we've got in our kind of languages programs of study references to the need, you know, for culture as part of things, but actually cultural capital is something that Ofsted are talking about and is essential about having within our schemes of work in general. And if we can find ways to incorporate cultural capital through languages, then I think that's an absolute win, because even children who find it really difficult to learn a language sometimes really enjoy learning about the culture of a country. They may find it difficult to learn Spanish, but they absolutely love Spanish football, and you've got your hook in there and you can find a way through, you know, with that. So, you know, it started as this kind of social construct, and it came from this kind of sociological perspective of cultural capital and linking to social mobility. It's kind of evolved really in terms of how we see it in school terms, but Ofsted added it to the Schools Inspection Handbook in 2019. And fundamentally, it's about pupils being educated systems and helping and engender appreciation of human creativity and achievement. So I like to exploit that for language purposes, if I'm completely honest, and I'm reading that from a languages point of view. And I feel that, you know, for us, linked with the languages Key Stage 2 curriculum from the English National Curriculum, learning a foreign language is a liberation from insularity and provides an opening to other cultures, which I think is such an important sentence. And it's probably the one thing I'm more passionate about, even than the actual language itself. Learning about the language and about the country, it is, you know, what you get from that is immeasurable. It's opening doors, it's broadening horizons, and, you know, pupils' curiosity and learning about the world. And I think this is the one time that children, you know, particularly who don't have English as a first language, that they really feel that this day is about them and they have a chance to really belong as well, and that really helps. So, you know, for me, it's about developing a love of languages and expanding horizons to learn about countries, culture and people. And this day is just the best gateway to start that practice in your school, because it then kind of gives you a gateway for the other days that come up, the other cultural days that happen throughout the year. And it just suddenly puts other countries, other languages on the table. It's a case of, you know, and some schools are extremely multinational and multilingual, and suddenly, without even trying, you've got a massive range. You know, I used to teach in London. Well, you know, you could go around the class and you could just count all the different languages that people spoke at home or did speak at some point. Whereas, you know, where I live now in South Wales, yes, there's Welsh and English, but you will see fewer other home languages being spoken. So it's even more important there, I think, to kind of build on that, because that diversity isn't automatically in the community. So it's really important for pupils to learn about it as well. So, you know, whether it's a case of celebrating the massive multicultural dimension you already have, or making sure that pupils in schools that don't have that multicultural dimension get the chance to learn more about it. So it's really important that cultural capital as a sort of construct, it reflects the global nature of languages. So I'm always at pains to make sure, teaching French and Spanish, that it's not just about France and Spain. We steer from the stereotypes. France isn't just about the baguettes, although they are delicious, and, you know, the French flag, but it's also about other countries that speak French. It's also that, you know, moving away from stereotypes so they understand more about French speaking culture or Spanish speaking culture. And this is true for any language that you're choosing to look at. It's just moving away from the stereotypes. Really, you want it sort of at the heart of the curriculum. So building European Day of Languages in at the heart of something that you're doing in your lessons, whether you're a language teacher or not, it is just such an important thing to help enrich that aspect of cultural capital. And it's perfect for making links with other subject areas as well, which is really helpful for your EAL learners too, because, you know, you are kind of creating a vibrant language learning environment. So, you know, championing it by making sure that you have got languages that are visible. So Helen shared welcome posters and things like that. Having those up, you know, yes, put them up now for European Day of Languages to introduce them, and then you keep those up and people see them and they start to refer to them and they see them. So in Wales, for example, where I live now, you'll see everything is bilingual throughout most English speaking primary schools. They'll have Welsh and English everywhere, and children get really used to it. So having that culture that you have, you know, Helen shared lots of different language packs, that you have words in different languages around the school, suddenly creates that vibrant learning atmosphere. It not only supports the development of any EAL learners, but it also supports any language teaching as well, because it just creates that language rich environment. You know, involving the community, and European Day of Languages is awesome for this. You know, a school assembly is wonderful, and if you've got, you know, many of you mentioned parents coming in, if you have people that can come in to help with that, then that's absolutely amazing. So whole school events are just fantastic for this. You know, as I've said, food is always a biggie, but, you know, whole school competitions, assemblies, little shows, you know, those kind of things are wonderful. Singing songs, as many of you mentioned, they're just brilliant for getting pupils in the spirit of things and really kind of celebrating the culture. And then after European Day of Languages, you extend that. So it isn't just a one-off one day, this culture continues. So it's a really great way at the start of the year, whether you are an EAL coordinator, a language subject coordinator, or you're not a language specialist and you're just here to kind of look at promoting it in general. It's brilliant to have at your subject lead or your classroom kind of portfolio to really push that cultural capital aspect, to celebrate the diversity, as I've said, for cross-curricular links. So Helen shared quite a few of these, but, you know, there are lots of practical ideas that we've got for things that you're doing, but, you know, sharing similarities and differences is wonderful. I've really enjoyed this year looking at the different curricula across the UK and Ireland. So looking at the curriculum for excellence in Scotland, the curriculum for Wales, looking at the draft curriculum for primary languages in the Republic of Ireland, because we have so many similarities and differences in what they do. But one key aspect, particularly in the Welsh curriculum, is that there's a real focus on identifying similarities and differences with your own language and culture and that of the language that you're learning, which I think is absolutely wonderful. And extending on that for European Day of Languages is brilliant, to just, you know, to keep it at an anecdotal level. But what do you know? If you've been to another country, what did you notice? You know, it's little things, isn't it? It's those little kind of traditions or those things that people do that are lovely to talk about. You know, a virtual school trip, well, you know, things like looking on Google Earth, for example, and visiting different places is wonderful. I've got a PowerPoint that I'll share with you, the link to shortly, and that's got links to kind of 3D models of different tourist attractions, but visiting tourist attractions. So if people are mentioning countries they want to visit, find a tourist attraction and go and see it. Music and dance is always great, or a cooking challenge, which obviously, as we've said, food can be tricky with allergies, but if it's something within your school kitchen, that could be something particularly for younger learners. Helen mentioned passport stamps as well is great. Looking at money around the world is brilliant, and at Twinkl we've got loads of different resources from the different countries, and that can be really fun, having, particularly for younger primary learners, setting up a little shop in your class and they have to pay with different currency. That's always really fun. Travel brochures, as Helen mentioned, which is great, and show and tell. So, you know, this is something that people bring in, something that they have in their house, because I'm pretty sure that most people could find something in their house that's representative of a different culture or a different language. You know, I'm just looking across my room there and thinking, oh, I've got a picture of something, you know, and you could bring that in. What have they got and why? It could be from somewhere they visited or somewhere they know or a neighbour. Cultural games and sports are always fun. Myths and legends are great ones as well. So learning about other countries, fairy stories or tales and those kind of things. Somebody mentioned earlier about the clothes. Well, having a fashion show is fantastic fun for this, and you can even, you know, make things yourself and actually build a kind of recycled fashion show, and then weave in sustainability, and then you're ticking all the boxes in one go. Same with arts and crafts. Planning a journey is always great, and that weaves in other skills such as numeracy, because you're adding up the prices, for example, but planning a train ticket, planning a journey, for example. Looking at etiquette and manners, which goes with similarities and differences. So my niece, for example, is on her year abroad from university in France at the moment, and it was her birthday. And even though she's in her early 20s and she's been learning languages for some time, she was quite taken aback when the 50-something owner of where she's working for her year abroad came and, you know, kissed her on both cheeks for her birthday. And she was like, you're in my personal space. And, you know, that he was, you know, being genuinely friendly. And we, you know, we're naturally more standoffish, you know, in Britain these days. And, you know, it's that kind of thing. It's thinking that was actually him being really polite. It wasn't kind of a negative thing, but for her, she kind of bristled at it. So it's talking about those things, which is quite fun. And also school days. Children absolutely love comparing school days in different countries and finding out how things are different. The main thing I would say is thinking about cultural capital is that, and this is about embedding it in general, is thinking about what you're doing already and thinking about how a change of an angle could just simply mean that you can incorporate cultural capital. Actually, you know, asking pupils for their input on what you could do is always a brilliant way. And I've just linked a couple of resources in here, which are in the which will be in the PowerPoint that you get sent. So you can look at a CPD resource on developing cultural capital, and then also some ideas on pupil voice questionnaires as well. I mentioned some other cultural events. So once you've, you know, celebrated European Day of Languages and you've got this embedded in your calendar, which I think is such an important day for all age groups, primary and secondary, I think it can be really fun. You can start, you know, for older learners, they can, you know, actually learn a different language or really move into that. It's really great. Whereas, you know, for younger learners, then it's just learning a bit about the culture. I'm always at pains to point out, you know, it's kind of skills, not drills, with language learning. And I think, you know, rather than just, you know, aimlessly learning some new words or whatever, actually learning about the country is so valuable. And children absolutely love learning to say hello in different languages and practicing that. So, you know, those can be really fun. But once you've got European Day of Languages in the calendar, the next one, and this is an event that I'm really enjoying because it's massively gained in traction over the last few years. Remember the first time we started making resources for it and talking about it, very few people had heard of it, and now it's quite widely celebrated. But International Mother Language Day, because this is lovely because it's celebrating home languages from your school. But again, I tend to move from that to it just being actually, we're moving it to, we're celebrating all languages again in the school community, and that's really lovely, or languages around the world. And that's just another great day as well to get in the calendar for an assembly or those sorts of things. Europe Day, I know I mentioned about being Europe centric, but you know, we are still geographically in Europe, and it is useful to kind of look at Europe Day and how that's celebrated and why it's celebrated, and then looking at some other countries. And then the World Day for Cultural Diversity on the 21st of May, which really follows on from these themes and really focuses on the cultural aspect. So if you've started embedding the cultural capital with European Day of Languages, you know, by the time you get to May and you've kind of celebrated these events, as well as kind of other things that you could look at, like, for example, Day of the Dead or Bastille Day or any other kind of national events from other countries, you know, whether those are, you know, St. David's Day in Wales, etc., St. Patrick's Day, those kind of things. Well, actually, you've put together a really good program for cultural capital in your school then by building on that. Plus, you've really promoted languages and you're really empowering language learning, and EAL learners to really feel that this is a school, an environment that really values languages and learning languages, which I think is wonderful. So we've got a massive category of language resources. I'm just going to put the link in the chat for you. The link is also here in this resource that you'll get sent by email as well, on a PDF. But we've got some great resources from videos that will give you kind of concept videos that you could just watch if you're sort of at a loss of what to do. Then the videos will last maybe 6 or 7 minutes, and that gives you a great kind of intro to your lesson. We've also got some fantastic PowerPoints for different ages. You can see the bottom right is one for younger learners where they're learning to say hello in a selection of different languages, which is a lovely springboard because you can then go on to look at what other languages you've got that you can find out about and do some research into that. I mentioned earlier the European Day of Languages Tour of Europe, where you can click on, we've got some monuments around the UK and around some other countries, like the Eiffel Tower, for example. We've got some castles and museums and various things that you can then kind of look at as 3D models and see them, which can be really fun for children. And you can then springboard from that to look at Google Earth and actually visit those sorts of things. We've also got lots of quizzes, PowerPoints, we've got board games, we've got interactive games, worksheets, colouring, collaborative colouring, all sorts of lovely activities to celebrate the day. They're really nice in a language class, they're really nice in a club, they're fun sort of after school activities or lunchtime activities, a whole range, whether you actually want to go down the route of learning about Europe, whether you want to go, promoting other languages, whether you want to kind of focus on anything in particular. We've, got a massive selection there that you can look at. I also wanted to introduce you as part of Learning Languages. If you're kind of thinking, well, I'd like to maybe do a day where I teach a bit of a different language. We've got a really wonderful new scheme that lends itself to this, which is called Lightning Languages. I've also got a nice Lightning Languages background today. And it's a really nice scheme that you can adopt as your languages scheme of work, but also dip into it for an event like the European Day of Languages to teach something in a different language, which is really great. We've got really lovely characters for Key Stage 2. These are our kind of humanoid space creatures, and our super dog, which is probably my favourite. And these are our characters for Key Stage 1 age group. These are the Lightning Languages Sparks, and they help everybody on a love of languages. And the mission behind all of these resources is that the characters all live on a distant planet and they love learning about human languages and human codes. And they, what are these secret languages that everyone is talking in, and how do we find out more about this? And that's kind of the theory behind the scheme. They're topic-based lessons, and the lessons are around half an hour for Key Stage 2 and about 15 minutes for Key Stage 1. So they're perfect for a lunchtime club, the Key Stage 1 ones, or, you can actually put together a really lovely set of lessons. If you picked one unit, you could do a really nice set of lessons for European Day of Languages. Within the unit, you'd find nice things like ebooks, interactive games, there are videos, songs, activity packs, and all sorts of things. If you wanted to introduce something about a language, and then it gives you a chance to practice all of those things. And as important as I've said, build up with a culture video and a culture quiz that really helps embed that. Even if you just look at the scheme and dip in and find our culture videos and quizzes, those will give you a really nice in for a way of embedding some culture in what you're doing on a regular basis. The Key Stage 1 scheme, as I've said, they're for younger children. The lessons are around 15 minutes and they're really cute PowerPoints. They've all got songs in them. And again, we've got song videos, the same as we have for Key Stage 2, there are song videos. So again, you might just want to play some songs on European Day of Languages, but within this scheme, there are lots of things that you can dip in and dip out of. So if you'd like to explore and have a look, because there's a lot of fun resources that you can use to help you really promote languages really and make it look engaging and enjoyable, then take a look and have a browse through the scheme, and you can have a look and see everything that's there. And that's all I've got to share from languages really, but it was just to give you a flavour of some things that you could do to start with the scheme. And most importantly, just to kind of say that European Day of Languages is such a great opportunity to really promote a multilingual atmosphere in your school. Helen talks about translanguaging. It's a great day for thinking about those sorts of opportunities. So many, I mentioned the curricula across Wales, Scotland and Ireland. You see plurilingualism mentioned so often, and it's not just focusing on learning one language, it's actually looking at languages, comparing them to your own language. So, it's a great chance to maybe just look at a collection of words and phrases from other languages. Can you work out where they belong? To look at some idioms, to look at some conventions, to look at some sense of manners, some etiquette, those sorts of things, and just sharing some anecdotes and having a show and tell. It shouldn't have to be something that causes tremendous amount of work, but if you do make a board game and you make those things and you made them once and laminated them, then you have got those for subsequent years. So anything that you do, you can build on in future years, but certainly leading up towards an assembly, I think, is always a great way to go. And then looking at a song or those sorts of things, I think, is always wonderful. If you'd like some more help with some ideas, please, both Helen and I have shared our links for social media groups. I man our Facebook group, and Helen, obviously the EAL ones, were both available if you've got any questions on those sorts of things, or if you feel there's anything, a resource that you'd like some more of, you can get in touch with Twinkl Cares, who can help you there as well. Helen, have you got anything to add?
No, that was amazing. That was amazing, Bethan. I love your energy and your enthusiasm. Amazing. Like, I wish I was back in the classroom doing some of these fun days. It's so
great. I think it's just something I feel so passionate about, because languages has such a tricky reputation. It is really tricky to motivate learners, and this is the one chance where everyone kind of goes, oh, languages, they're quite nice, aren't they? And it's the one time that you can do that. So I think European Day of Languages, World Day for Cultural Diversity, that's such great days, and we should seize upon them, because I think life is not easy for children for whom English is a second language in school. Life is not easy for them, and this is a great day to celebrate all languages, to help them feel useful. Life, learning a language can be tricky for many children, and this is a day to kind of make it fun and accessible. So I think it can be a really great opportunity to just have some fun with it in your school. You can try something yourself. You don't have to get it right. It's just about broadening some horizons. It's that liberation from insularity and just opening some doors for them, really. And I think that's the most important thing, is just, rather than it being, oh no, it's European Day of Language, it's thinking, oh yeah, this is a great day. There's loads I can look at here. There are celebrities who speak foreign languages, for example. It's a great time to look at some of those.
I think it's that definite idea of bringing parents in, that great community vibe as well, isn't it?
Definitely.
You can create such massive opportunities there.
Huge. And because it is a whole school event, and it tends to be that SLT are often very on board with European Day of Languages. Many languages teachers report things are difficult trying to promote languages and the status of languages within their school, but this is a day that's always celebrated across all curriculum areas and all subjects, so that really helps as well.